Well, my truck blew up. This is not a video I want to make. Currently sitting in it, it's in the AC. Runs great, shifts okay, makes real bad noises. So let's see if we can make it. Oh, that's the sound. That is me pushing this truck backwards through park. I'm not that strong. So this is what has to come out. There's the transfer case. You can see it's pretty wet at the bottom. I just did all the fluids on this truck 9,000 miles ago, and maybe 10,000 miles, and here we are. Bad transfer case, probably run dry from the leak, at least I'm guessing. Could still have fluid in it, haven't drained it. I just know that adding fluid to it or flushing it is not going to fix the mechanical problem with it. So at this point, we're just gonna pull it out. And the best part about this is I'm leaving tomorrow afternoon to go tow a camper to go camping. It's gonna be fine, I think. So I know I haven't really had this truck on the channel as far as videos are concerned, but I did post a few status updates on this thing. I bought this thing wrecked, hit in the front. I acquired parts over a long period of time, and when I had everything, I decided to build the truck. So when I bought this truck, it was wrecked dead on, right here in the front bumper. Took out the hood, core support, trans cooler, AC condenser, but it didn't do much damage beyond that. The radiator did not need to be replaced. The fan shroud was good, fan blade was good, and I slowly acquired parts as I found them. So the hood is a different shade, and I do not care. I might find one that's the right shade down the road, but it's a hood that's not bent, and it fits the truck. One of the things I had to do was replace this bar. So it did bend this bar and actually ripped it off this side of the frame, because I guess it hit like a stump or a fire hydrant or something low, because the damage wasn't as much up top. This was all damage from everything being pulled. So I cut that out of a frame at the shop, parts truck, and I welded it in there. And I am not a welder, I'm a guy with a welder. I'd like to make sure that you guys understand that. There's the damaged bar that I cut out of there. And I went through the entire truck when I did this. I did everything maintenance related. I put shocks, I did brakes, rotors, and pads. I did parking brake cables. I got the parking brake working again. I fixed the wheel speed sensors that Copart ripped off the rear end. I fixed as much as I possibly could to where I could rely on this. It has a rebuilt title. It's a workhorse. It's got hail damage now. It got hailed on at my house. It's a tool for me. This truck serves a purpose: towing cars, eventually pushing snow, and hauling parts. That's it. It doesn't need to be pretty. I don't need a fancy truck to do any of those things. I do need something that's reliable, and this truck has been a thief lately. It has stolen my time, it has stolen my money, my energy, my effort, things that I wish I could just spend on the cars that I really enjoy, and not this. This really could not have happened at a worse time. 2 days after this exhibited symptoms of a transfer case problem, I had to go pick up a camper. In fact, on the way to go pick the camper up a couple days ahead of time is when I noticed the problem, and this thing barely made it home. It was making some terrible noises. So I really had a Wednesday evening, an entire day Thursday, and Friday morning I was supposed to go pick up the camper. Why does this happen? Why does this always happen? Last year, I rented a camper to tow with this same truck, and they double booked it, and I had to sleep in a tent, and I don't tent well. I'm just not a tent guy. I know some people love it. I'm not one of those people. So I was bound and determined not to sleep in a tent. So I did what any normal person would do and try to find a transfer case with about 36 hours to get the job done. And I found one in Atlanta, Illinois, which is just north of Lincoln. It's about, I think it's like 140 miles from here. So I messaged the guy. It was on Marketplace. There were no local yards that had one that were out. And I knew if I asked for one that was in a truck still, they'd be 2 or 3 days behind. So that would put me past when I needed my truck. So I drove up to Atlanta, Illinois the next morning, picked the transfer case up. On the way back, stopped off at GM dealership to get the output shaft seal, to get the gasket, and then had some fluid here at the house. And I put a transfer case in it. Yeah, I had this truck running and driving by 6 o'clock in the evening, and I had some other stuff going on that day. It worked a little bit. Normal people do this stuff, right? I can't believe that the transfer case broke in this truck. I mean, I've never done anything out of the norm.
the heck? Seriously? What is he doing, Stella? What the heck? Oh my God.
I've only done truck stuff. Well, there's the old one. Got it all fixed. Found a transfer case on Marketplace for 300 bucks. Way better than the 800 to 1,000 that they normally bring. And glad I can have it fixed in the same day, but I think we're gonna tear this thing down to find out what happened. Alrighty guys, got the transfer case up at work on one of my tables, and you can definitely tell it was leaking a little bit. And all this buildup and this junk, that's how my whole truck looked. It was great. Lots of nasty power washing when I first got that thing, but it seems particularly wet around here. In fact, it looks like it's washed away some of the grime. I haven't cleaned this or power washed this, clearly. And keep in mind, I put brand new fluid in this. I drained the fluid about 10,000 miles ago, and it was nasty. It was terrible looking, but to its defense, almost every single 200,000 mile truck that comes into this place, when we drain the transfer case, it looks bad. It didn't look any more bad than anything else I've seen, and I've sold plenty of transfer cases without an issue. Now, for those that are wondering, this is the Magna MP1225 or 1226. This is what comes in 7 to 10, 3/4 and 1 ton gasoline trucks with a floor shift option. I specifically wanted a truck with a floor shift option, and I think it came back to haunt me. Not that the electronic shifts are any cheaper, but perhaps a little more looked after. Now let's tear this thing down. I have not drained it, which is why we're gonna try some hokey stuff to get it to drain. See what it looks like on the inside. I suspect it still has some fluid in it because some did slosh around when I moved it around in the back of my truck, but I don't know what to expect. Let's see what this fluid looks like. Well, it looks dark and has a smell. Not good. I don't see any sparkles in it yet. It's not enough though. And when I did pull this out, this whole side was wet. And I think these are supposed to hold about 1.5 quarts. And I can tell you that's about half a quart so far. But to be fair, some did spill out too, and I'm making excuses for it now. Let's tip it in favor of draining. Yeah, there's more fluid hiding in there. Oh, now I see sparkles. But that's still not enough fluid. This is about what it looked like when I drained it the first time. Is there something in there? Ooh, it's pasty. That's not a good sign, is it? There's some of the sparkles in the fluid. And it looks like there's, well, it's hard to tell what that is. A foreign object. Drain plug. Covered in stuff. So I know a lot of you hope for carnage, and most of the time when I get an engine in, I also hope for some carnage. But in this case, I would really like it if I could fix this, because these are 800 to 1,000 bucks used, and rebuilt much more than that. So if I can fix this with some bearings and some parts, maybe a chain, or who knows what's wrong with it, but I'm hoping for minimal damage, and I also wouldn't expect any parts to go flying through the shop. I will also be the first to let you know that I have never done this before, so I don't really know what it takes. We're just going to try some stuff, and I hope that it comes apart. I see some stuff that we're going to need some pliers for. Let's see if these will do the trick. I don't know. That may not work. We'll cross that bridge later. Some of these bolts are pretty gunky, so I'm probably going to have to clean some of them out. You know what? We're going to spend some time and make sure these are all cleaned out. It's all caked with a bunch of junk. Don't want to strip one of these out.
All right.
Let's make sure she's in there. Tap it in with a little hammer.
Okay, that's it. We're done.
I would imagine there's much more to it, which is why blue is going to help us out here, I think. Is there a place to pry on this? This might do it. All right, it's starting to split now. It is not helping, is it? Okay, let's roll this over and see what we're looking at. Well, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't come apart down here. Ah, that looks like some successful prying action. Oh, now we're stuck on the back end. This is gonna come apart. There we are. Stuff is happening. I think this will come apart in one piece, actually. Oh, there's some broken stuff in here already. But it doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to. You can see the chain. You can see some shift forks and a bunch of sparkles. I think actually this thing will come all the way apart. Oh, and I say all the way apart. I can split the case. All right. Well, let's see if I can see where the damage is. This rides on. Oh, there's some loose stuff in here. What is this? Let's pull this gear out. That's a very cool piece, but I don't know if it's good or not. Here's our chain. I guess it could also be in the planetary, which is in this case half. It's right there. There's the fork. Oh, that's bad. Okay, well, that's not good. Everything is wasted. That collar looks all right. So here's where we're at so far. There's some, yes, I have no idea what this is here. That was laying in the bottom. There's some more of the yes right there. But so far, the worst damage I've seen is this absolutely annihilated shift fork. This thing is gone. Now, I did use four-wheel drive in this truck at least a couple dozen times. I drove it in the snow, drove it in the mud and the gravel, towing. It went in and out of gear just fine. I don't really understand why it's like that yet. And when we look here, the chain appears to be in one piece. It's not broken by any stretch. And we'll have to pull this out here in a minute. So what I think is happening here is that since this fork is so destroyed, it fits in this collar. So I'd like to pause the video here. I think the noise that you heard when I would try to shift this transfer case was this geared section on the collar slipping in the planetary. And I looked at it closely and I didn't see any major damage. It's got tons of play. It could not fully engage or disengage. It was probably hopping between neutral and two-wheel drive. Look at that play. It's not supposed to be like that. There's what they're supposed to look like, and this is what this looks like. So I think what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to buy a new fork, like 40 or 50 bucks. I'm not going to replace anything else. I'm not going to sell this transfer case. I'm going to keep this as a backup because I use my truck as a truck. I'm gonna get everything cleaned out, buy a case of brake clean to rinse all the stuff out. I might replace a few other parts, some seals and stuff, but it seems senseless to sell this as a core for 150 bucks. I might replace this because I think that's where some of those chunks of plastic came from. So all these parts are viable. The gears look like they're in excellent condition. This doesn't really have hardly any wear. And because of such, the chain looks excellent as well. So I think it's really not as bad as it sounded. And $50 fork, a case of brake clean, and some sealant. Didn't see any damage to the planetary. The bearings, once they have better lubrication, they'll feel a lot better. I'm happy. So I've put about 500 miles on this transfer case with no issues. Now, I don't know the miles or anything, which is exactly why I'm not going to scrap or core out my old one. I'm just gonna stick a fork in it. It'll be done. Got the truck back together, transfer case is in, everything's working fine. I feel like $1 million. I mean, I feel terrible because I spent all day in the heat putting a transfer case in this truck. And I go pick up the camper the next day, we go pick up groceries, we go head to our campsite. Everything works fine on the way there. And then on the way back, it starts running on less than 8 cylinders. Awesome. Now what's crazy is literally the weekend before, I let my buddy John borrow my truck and trailer to go pick up an M3 in Ohio, and he had no problems. Thank God. I'm very thankful that none of the issues happened with the transfer case or it running poorly when it was out in the middle of Ohio when I couldn't do anything about it. It happened here in town where I could do something about it and I didn't have to get anything towed. It could have been much worse. So I kind of barely made it back with the camper, and I decided, you know, I really need to get this thing fixed. So as part of the diagnosis, I plugged my scan tool in and watched some live data because I want to know what is going on, and it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. It's out of its mind. I have, well, it's running so bad. 8,300 RPM. Either the tach's lying or this is lying. This is running terrible. Desired idle speed. Something is incorrect. Bad stuff is happening right now. Found a thing. Bad. The problem is in here. I'm gonna unravel that and we're gonna find it. Where are you, problem? Whoever put this together, I have words for you. None of them I can say on YouTube. I don't see the problem yet, but I need to get a razor blade and cut this sheathing back. I knew this thing had the engine out before. What's this big old knot here? I think I guarantee you the problem is gonna be. Well, that all looks okay. I'm gonna have you start the truck up in a second so we can try to isolate which wire is the problem instead of diagnosing it the right way. Give it the old wiggle test. And the other thing is it could be further down here. Oh crap. Look at that. That wire's warding through the sheathing. Who installed this harness? I don't like you. I don't want to put an engine harness on this thing. Oh no. It's all bad. This thing's gonna need an engine harness. Or at least a few hours of repair. We can fix it the wrong way and it'll be fine. Look at that. That's boogered up. Oh, some jackwagon cut all the zip ties and then, well, I wondered why it's got a harness problem. Well, it's not my problem now. It's the YouTube guy's problem. Start this thing up. I don't know what part of the harness is bad, because it's all like, look at this. Who put this together? All we did was fix the ref part. Those two wires are bad. I don't know how to make it stupid again. Oh, it's fixed. I fixed it on accident. I can't get it to do it again.
It's not dropping out, but it is full RPM.
It's in this thing. And the problem's like in this?
Oh.
It's gotta be right here.
Like a razor blade. Smells good.
Got that cord in there. Yeah, fine to you yet.
I'm not sure your dentist recommends using your teeth.
I don't care. Now see, this part doesn't really look that bad, and it doesn't look like somebody's been in it. That all looks okay. I don't see any pins recessed or anything. On this side. It's not on the elbow, look. Oh, maybe it is.
No, you're kind of pulling down there.
Yeah, that's this.
Weird that it's not throwing any,
Why is it not throwing a coil sensor, coil circuit code? Alright guys, I have narrowed it down to this wire here. This is a power source for the coils, and look at that light spot. That is stretched. I bet I could just pull this apart. Look at that. You're not supposed to do that. So what I'm gonna do is the right thing, and we're going to cut this back a little bit. And I brought home a donor harness. We'll repin this single terminal in this connector. We'll use the right way to fix it, which is going to be a heat shrink butt connector. And then we'll take a look at the rest of the junk on this harness from some hack reinstalling this harness and pretty much wrecking any or all of the hold downs. It's really sad. All right, guys, I got this repaired. Not fixed, it's repaired. There's new wire I cut out of another harness. Well, I just depinned the connector. Heat shrink butt connector. I wouldn't let me work on your car. I'm just kidding. This is just a temporary repair. I need to go tow some cars. I'm gonna go try to track down a harness. I got a part number on it. It's discontinued, which is awesome. Thanks GM for the support. These trucks were made up until 2014, but we don't need to make the engine harness. I'm not gonna complain anymore. We're just going to hope that it starts on and runs on 8 cylinders. Fingers crossed. Well, seems to sound okay. Run smooth. Obviously, there's more work that needs to be done with this harness. Look at that. I can wiggle it around. No problems. That one wire, that was it. I think that's power supply for that whole bank of coils. And who knows why it was reading 8,000 RPM. There's some more shaped wires in this area right here. That's a future Eric problem. I can get it. It runs okay, and I can do the whole wiggle test. Still running on 8. So it's repaired. It's not fixed. This is not anything I do on a customer's car, but I don't work on other people's cars, so I'm back on the road. Oh, and the driver's side hood hinge has left us. It is no longer a hinge anymore, and it's gonna snap. Thankfully, they're cheap, and I may even have a used one if it's the same on a half-ton. Gotta love old salvage trucks, you know. It's gonna need a radiator. We're gonna treat it like a BMW. We're gonna do hoses, do radiator. We might do a fan clutch and water pump. I'm undecided. Gonna replace the overflow tank or the coolant reservoir because I can't even tell when it's full or not because it's so disgusting. And I guess we'll put a little bit of money into this thing since I use it so much. So I don't know if you can tell, but the cylinder head, that engine bracket or the accessory bracket for the alternator and power steering pump is painted black. Most of the things in this engine are painted black, like it's been out before. And I can tell you that somebody without as many brain cells as muscles was responsible for mutilating this engine harness. And I am really not happy about it. Thankfully, I'm very well versed in the wiggle test. I didn't throw any parts at this thing trying to fix the Misfire. I simply did the wiggle test and found some pretty bad stuff. So what I ended up doing, let me hop up here. I ended up splicing in a complete coil connector with some butt connector, heat shrink butt connectors. It is not a permanent fix. It just gets it by so that I can use the truck. This thing is going to need an engine harness. It's got frayed wires right here. There's a ground down here, right there, that's exposed. There's some damage down there as well. All because someone didn't put any of the factory hold down hardware back on the engine harness. That is, I just don't understand. If you take it off, put it back on. It's not that hard. And I think this thing's had an engine put in it, and I think that's why I face these issues. But there's also an argument there for the fact that, you know, these trucks are bailout trucks. The wires are not as good as, the wiring is not as good as the predecessor. There's a lot of electrical issues with this generation of truck, and they just don't tolerate this kind of ill repair. What I did is not a permanent repair. It's a temporary fix at best. I'm not saying that it can't last. Obviously, I've been able to drive the truck for the last couple weeks with no trouble. But it's not always going to be that way. And I'm just waiting for the next time I figure out that there's another broken wire in another part of the harness. And I don't want to just keep patching it and spending time on it, having a problem where the truck breaks down, have to get it towed. Don't want to deal with any of that. So the right way to fix it is to replace the engine harness. And lucky for me, GM discontinued it. I can't buy a new engine harness. And it was only $400 or $500, which I would gladly pay to keep from having to pop the hood on this truck all the time and wonder where the problem is, but I can't do that. So now I'm left to the secondary market to try to find a used harness, which is 2007 through 2010 Silverado or Sierra 25 or 3500, 6-liter gas, 4-wheel drive with manual transfer case. I'm sure there's a ton of really beautiful, nice condition harnesses out there. It's going to be a tough find. And shortly after repairing the harness, it started to run warm because the radiator failed. So I had to replace the radiator, and I did hoses. And when I had it all apart, I realized very quickly that the coolant in this truck is really, really not good. It was full of rust. It looked like an old AMC engine with porous casting. So now I'm going to drive it and change the coolant every 3 months and flush the heater core, which I had to have replaced too because it was leaking when I bought the truck. It's gonna be fine. Why do I do this to myself? I know what many of you are thinking right now. Why do you keep fixing that old junk box? You should just go out and buy a more expensive, nicer, newer truck, something with more features, with a clean title and no rust and lower miles. It'll be more reliable for you. You're not wrong, but I have one mother and she can't even tell me what to do. I am more stubborner than my old grammar teacher. And I'm going to keep fixing this junk box as long as I physically can. And there's a good reason for that. I don't care. I don't care about the truck. I care about what the truck can do. It can haul my cars. It can haul my parts. It can push snow. And it doesn't need to be pretty and fancy and nice and expensive. And I don't care about any of the features that the modern trucks have. I don't even want them anyway. It's just more effort when something does go wrong. It's more expense. With a truck like this, I buy this generation of truck regularly at my salvage yard. So if I need something like a hinge for the hood or some other part, I can just pull one off of one of my own trucks. That's the point of driving an old beater, is that it doesn't really nickel and dime you to death, and you don't sweat the small stuff. Since I bought this truck, it got hailed on. It's got a whole bunch of new dents. I don't even care. Somebody could rear end me and drive away. As long as the truck still drives, I don't care, because it's still a truck, but it doesn't have to be fancy and flashy to do the things I need it to do. And if I had a nicer, newer truck, I would feel guilty about driving it in the winter, about not parking it in a garage, about putting miles on it, pushing snow, doing all the bad things I do to this truck. I couldn't do that to a more modern truck that was expensive. So I'm not interested in a nice truck. I can drive this beater with a smile on my face. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's not the normal video, but you can expect more not normal videos, which I guess makes them kind of normal. We're not even gonna get into that. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.